welcome back to Let's Talk, episode 20. Let's talk about the entertainment industry. Today, I have a man infiltrating my podcast. You are the first man because I'm doing a little segment. I think I'm going to do it maybe once a month, if that, because I can't have too much man on this show. But it's Man Talk Monday. And today, I have one of my good old friends, Danny. Danny, introduce yourself to the women and maybe the 5% of men who are listening to this episode.
Hurts a little bit that you introduced me as your old friend. I'm not that old.
Okay,
I'm kidding.
30
Yeah, it's been a while since we've caught up. So my name's Danny Irizarry. We, Anna and I, we both kind of started pursuing acting intentionally around the same time when we were in our early teens. And we just kind of, we stayed in each other's lives for a while and kept encouraging and giving each other tips and pointers and stupid advice. And now we get a chance to reconnect after it's been a long time since we've actually sat down and had a full conversation.
I was trying to think about it. I don't genuinely know when we talked last because it's also, it's not something where, people who get married, they don't just constantly stay in touch with friends that they
Well,
that
I'm also such a bad texter. I try. I desperately want to be a good texter. The thing is, I'll get a text, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, I should reply to that. I'm going to finish this thing that I'm doing, and then weeks.
We'll go.
Be like, do you want to be on this podcast? You said yes. I said okay. We set up the times, and then I was like, we're still on, and I just never.
Yeah, nothing.
Yep. So, but we did. We made it. We survived. I did text you like 5-10 minutes before we actually started recording, and said
that I wasn't
and then
there.
I joined thinking, oh shoot, he's probably on waiting for me, and you were not.
No, it's not.
I thought that was your way of kind of hinting to me that I needed to join, and it was not.
Did I make you sit there for like 10 minutes and
I was sitting.
No.
I was genuinely just sitting here waiting, watching TikToks on my phone.
Yeah, just scrolling. Yeah. That's like.
Okay. But anyways, yes. So like you said, we met doing this little thing called AMTC. People who listen to my dad know it a lot and have heard about it a lot because he used to promo it and then promote because they actually, I don't know if you know this, they came out and started doing something new. It's not called AMTC anymore, but it's literally the exact same thing.
I'm still subscribed to the email list, so I definitely have seen it come in through my email. But if I'm bad at texting, I'm definitely even worse at
emailing.
Even worse. So
Yeah.
they know they like that, but we met, and what is it? It was actors, models, and talent for Christ, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And would it be fair to say you were more on the acting side? I was kind of the acting/singing. I would feel like singing was more of my thing.
You're certainly better at singing than I was. We're gonna be in trouble if we put any of the footage of us trying to sing together
anywhere.
In 2012, we were young kiddos. The first thing we sang was "Popular Song" by
it was the Ariana Grande and Vika cover of the song way back before the Wicked verse was available.
And I was little Anna was trying to be, like a little Ariana Grande. I remember trying to do all of the little riffs and things, trying to do it. It was probably, and
honestly, you killed it. I think you did a great job.
Video in this podcast so bad. I think I'm going to screen record it.
Of the videos that exist, that's the one to put on here.
You were the popular one, the popular chick. It is what it is, now I'm popular-ish. Standing on the field with the pretty pom-poms, now you're working at the movie selling popular corn. Could have been a mess, but I never went wrong, cause I'm putting down my story in a popular song. La la, I said I'm putting down my story in a popular song. My problem, I never was a model, I never was a scholar, but you were always popular. You were singing all the songs I don't know. Now you're in the front row, cause my song is popular. Popular, I know about popular. It's not about who you are or your fancy car, it's only ever who you were. Popular, I know about popular. And all that you have to do is be true to you. That's all you ever need to know. That's all you ever need to know.
Yeah, AMTC was actually really pivotal. It was pivotal for me in one way where my parents were really concerned that if I joined the entertainment industry, I would do the whole like Miley Cyrus, Justin Bieber, just
Yeah.
like go off and get lost in a world of drug, sex, and alcohol, and going to AMTC and going through a program where the whole point was like, how do we bring Jesus into this industry? How do we use this as a platform to share the gospel without being weirdo Christians? That my mom showed up and she brought me to a number of the classes that they did and the training sessions and the seminars, and that helped us communicate and helped us understand that my desire was to go into the film industry and to use that as a platform to share the gospel. Paul had a career, was a tent maker, and in that and outside of that as well, he shared the gospel. And so having a platform where you are interfacing with people who probably don't know Jesus or there's a higher chance of them not having a relationship with God, that allows you to have a platform to tell them about Jesus. And when we both were able to communicate about that immediately opened the doors to going, okay, this is actually something that may work, maybe something that Danny can do, and not just a pipe dream that's leading nowhere.
Well, and also, my husband and I have been talking about this a lot recently, where it's almost kind of becoming cool to be Christian again. But when we were doing that back then, I remember you didn't have a lot of, the Chris Pratts of the world coming out.
Yeah. Do you remember that song?
Remember that song, What Will People Do If They Find Out I'm a Jesus Freak?
Yes.
You remember that song? Yeah. That totally makes sense in that, like, what was that, the 2010s, 2015s? Because, like, Christians, to be clear, have not yet shed the natural state of being weirdos, but I feel like Christians were way more weird back in 2015.
Well, because you didn't see a lot of people who were super popular coming out and talking about it and doing all that stuff. And back then, Twitter was just somewhere where people posted stupid stuff. It wasn't the news. It wasn't where people professed their faith and love for Christ. Like, it was literally just dumb stuff. Social media was just dumb stuff,
And I think you also have a lot of people who were nominally Christian, who waved the banner of Christianity because it was a cultural thing, but weren't in any way upholding the values that the gospel talks about. And you have all these people who are actually really poor representations of what it means to be Christian, because everybody said, oh yeah, they're a Christian, but they're doing all these terrible things and not looking what Jesus looks like and not being Christian.
Yes, and going through MTC and just seeing that, okay, there's going to be a bunch of other people that believe the same thing I do. I'm not just going to be sitting in a room, I need to, like, cower in the corner and not talk about it. Like, I will meet people, or I'll have a chance to talk with people that maybe God is planting me right there, right then to, talk with them. And because I have even told people the kicker about you, because not only did I have you on to talk about the entertainment industry because we went through that stuff and you do all this stuff for a living, but you live in California. Dun, dun, dun.
Whoa. Yeah, moved to California like 7 years ago, just over 7 years ago now, which is crazy.
Because we were talking a little bit about it before it started.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I actually didn't hear what you said. What did you say?
No, we were talking about that a little bit before that started, because I feel like when Christians and, Christian conservatives hear about California, that's like the big no.
Yeah, it's a big scary place. It's
you say California and people go, oh my gosh, that's that dark cesspool where there's no light and Jesus goes to die.
Yes. And I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get into that later, because that is going to be a big part of this, because I don't even know. I was telling you that one time that I visited, and it was so overwhelming that I looked at my husband and I said, I never want to come back to this place ever again.
Yeah.
I physically don't want to come back to here ever. Like, I remember going to Target and everything was locked up. I remember people, like, coming after me for my bag, people asking me for money. People, like, we would be sitting outside eating and people would come up to us and be like, can you buy me cigarettes? I'm like, this doesn't happen in Pella, Iowa.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's right now.
It's a very bold place. There's a lot of very bold people.
Work for it. Also, pardon me, I have a cold because for some reason I can't ever do this podcast and just be healthy. Okay, so every time I've done an episode, I've had an allergy issue, I've had a cold, I've been like sweating bullets because for some reason in my attic,
You're raising the stakes. You've got obstacles they have to work through.
Yeah, it's clear that this is just such a good podcast that I just have to deal with the evil that comes. Okay, so my first question for you.
Okay.
So, rewinding back to AMTP, when we first met, we used to be extremely close. Like we were talking, we talked all the time, FaceTime all the time, in between going the first and second time, and a little bit after the second time. And
You're about to just grab me with like, what happened? Where'd you go?
yeah, and so why are you in California?
Excuse me.
And so something that stood out to me that I thought might be a little bit of a good kind of icebreaker to get to know you and a little bit more about your faith is, and I remembered this because I was thinking about this the other day, because I was thinking about you and being like, what should I ask him? Because I actually don't know him. I know him, I don't know him. Okay.
Yep. We get to be reintroduced as people who are already friends. Yeah.
Yes. And so I was remembering, different memories that we have. And something that stuck out to me was I remember when we were kids, you never liked to use the word awesome because you like to reserve it for God. And that was something that really stuck out to me because I had never met anybody who reserved a special, word for him because that's how he was described in the Bible. And so talk to me a little bit about that. Talk to us a little bit about your faith to kind of set the tone for the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so my mom is an artist. She paints and she draws and she loves crafting with her hands. She's a crafty lady. And one of my favorite things that she used to talk to me about was that the first 5 words of the Bible are in the beginning God created. And so she would constantly remind me that our God is a creative God. He is someone who takes joy and chooses to create. And if you look at the way he creates, it's with words. He speaks things into existence. And so we see from the very beginning of time, words have power. And we're created with the image of God, in the image of God, right? And we need to be cautious and intentional about how we use our words. James talks about it, right? Where a ship, a huge ship is steered by just a small rudder, or a wildfire is set ablaze by just a single spark. All the animals of the world have been tamed, but no man can tame the tongue, right? And that's, I think there's this really common habit with Christians and just with people in general, is to not pay any attention to the words that we're saying, which essentially it's like inflation with money, right? If you just keep using words, if you keep using words that are more and more powerful and effective at communicating what you're trying to say, if they're more and more dramatic words, they start losing their value. If I call everything awesome, this lunch that I ate the other day, and the candle that my wife bought me, and this pillow, then all of a sudden, how am I going to refer to God as awesome? That degrades how much he deserves for us to be in awe of him, if I'm referring to everything else as awesome. And I have to admit, I've definitely fallen off that train. I've even done a poor job of remembering that was that was something that I used to do. That was something that you reminded me of when we were talking about it. And yeah, I remember that. I was like, wow, that is something that that I want to keep doing. And also, as creatives, as artists, and as actors, I think it's really important for us, whether it's in relation to how we're reserving our terms that should just apply to God, or just our words in general. Our words are the way that we get to communicate. As an actor, the way you speak on set. As a singer, the words that you choose to write in your songs. If you're diluting the way that you communicate, you will begin to communicate poorly. And so I'm inspired by your reminder that, like, hey, words are important. Words are valuable. God has created us in his image with the ability to communicate with words that have meaning. And we need to be careful how we...
Well, I just remember when we were younger, you were like the grammar police.
Oh, yeah.
When we would, email or text. So I remember that, and I remembered using the word awesome, and I remember you not scolding me, but being
Oh, I'm sure I did. I'm sure I was way more obnoxious about it than I should have been.
but telling me that you like to reserve that for God, and just that lesson. And it honestly just hit me the other day when I was thinking about these questions. Like, I was like, wow, I have not thought about that in forever.
Yeah,
And
me either. So thank
you're welcome. You're welcome. And that's it. That was the whole point of this episode. You're welcome.
yeah. Now, yeah, this was actually just a lesson for me. Hey, Danny, get your act together.
And you talk about acting and, how actors use their words and that it's powerful. So how did you even, because I don't even think I know this. We just met at AMTC and you were just already gung-ho to be an actor. What really got you into it? What really got you interested in wanting to be a part of, this industry that we call entertainment?
Yeah. So my dad is he's the kind of guy who taught himself differential calculus because it was fun. And my sister inherited that same gene. I definitely did not. Numbers don't make sense to me. Geometry and algebra, I just don't get why the letters and numbers are friends. It doesn't make sense to me. But I grew up thinking that I was this super extroverted, like I am the extrovert of the family. I'm a crazy extrovert, and I love hanging out with people. And so I was always in choir at church. I was doing skits and VBS. I was always involved in the local theater and everything there, church-wise and just community-wise. But when I was 11 years old, I had a family friend at the summer camp that my family would serve at each summer, who went to Biola University in California. Was a film student, and she knew I did like the talent shows at that camp, and so like I was known as that weird extroverted kid who would do anything. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to do this. I have this short film that I have to shoot as my senior thesis for my class. Danny, you're the kind of kid who would want to be a part of this. Do you want to do it?" And so we ran around for a day with a DSLR and shot this short film. And at the end of that day, I remember going, wow, this is so cool that I get to tell these stories, that I had this opportunity this one time to tell this story. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so I have Elisa Logan to thank for that. And she went on to, she's now working with, she worked with Zach King for a while, who is that Vine magic guy. And has worked on projects like La La Land, and is working on a, she's worked on a bunch of stuff. So I'm really grateful for that she invited me to be a part of that. After that, when I was 11, I decided that I actually wanted to figure out how I could do it more. I wasn't sure that I wanted it to be a career, but I definitely knew that I wanted to do it more. So I started just, I got an Actors Access account for free and started applying to roles within student films, just whatever I could do here and there. And did background work in in some Christian films that would reach out to churches and ask for background. And then my dad came across AMTC and said, "Hey, this may be something that you'd want to look into." It was in that time, right before he had found AMTC, that I started having these conversations with my parents about maybe this is something that I want to do as a career. My mom specifically was most worried that would really that would change that I would lose my faith, or that I would just go off the rails. And so through AMTC, then we were able to start establishing a path that made sense, that wasn't just like, hey, I'm going to dive into this without any kind of game plan. Side note, around that time, I also started realizing that I am an introvert. I was just the least introverted of my family. And so I've learned now that I need to be on my own to recharge, and I actually prefer not to always be the center of attention. And that was a big part of why I wanted to be an actor when I was younger, because I was like, oh, I want to be the center of attention, so I'll be the center of attention. And it's crazy how that changes.
You were a fun kid. I'll never forget that. we were very fun children together, because I also feel like both of our personalities at that time when we first met we're very much like, I don't care who's around. I'm just going to be whatever and say whatever and do whatever I want to do. And that was a big lesson for us to learn that sometimes you actually can't say and can't do whatever you want to do at the exact moment that you want to say and want to.
Yeah. I feel so bad for the authorities in charge at AMTC and whoever were around us when we were together. My apologies to you.
It was all the time. And so I didn't know that you did a lot of those short films and stuff, and that's how you got into it. But yeah, so you kind of so we did AMTC together.
Yep.
We did it both times. Mm-hmm. So how did you actually get into the business? Because it's one thing, and I learned this very quick, because when I went through AMTC, I remember I got some callbacks the first time I went through, but I was just really young and not 100% sure it's what I wanted to do. So I never really followed up. The second time, I got none.
Yeah.
Like, no callbacks. And I just went home. And that was that. And then I started doing like local theater here. Absolutely adored it. It was because, like you say, just adapting a character and becoming somebody, even in something as simple as a local play in Des Moines, Iowa, like you have this ability sometimes to almost lose yourself. There would be shows that I would do, and I was so involved with the character that Anna would disappear and scenes and time would pass, and all of a sudden I'd be like, oh my gosh, the show is over, and I don't even remember any of it, because you just
I remember hearing incredible things about what you did in Hairspray, like that you just knocked people's socks off.
That was definitely one of my, and I miss it terribly because I don't do it anymore, because the people in Des Moines did not quite appreciate the fact that I don't believe in certain things. They did not appreciate that, and so I basically got silently booted out. I hope to do that in Pella. I found out that Pella has a local community theater, so I'm hoping to do that. Okay, anyways, I digress. That would be awesome. I'm really hoping so. The people in Pella, were a little bit more understanding of differing views, so I'm like, hopefully again I'll just bring you guys, because that'd be blast. And I miss it, and I just miss performing, because there's just an absolute rush you get, especially when you know that you're doing what God has called you to do, and it's something that you genuinely love and have a passion for. Those two things together are the biggest adrenaline rush that you will ever feel. Do you know what I'm saying? It's amazing.
You're an extraordinary talent. It would really be a shame if people didn't get to see it still.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I miss it a lot. And you are also an extreme, amazing talent, and we're going to get into that. So after AMTC, where did you go from there? What was your journey from being like, I like this is great, this is fun, oh wait, now I really, really, really want to do this?
Yeah. Well, so similar to you, the first time back in 2014 when we did AMTC, I got a number of callbacks, and I got way fewer in 2017. I actually don't remember. You
can't get fewer than 0.
But I in 2014 I already knew that by the time the Shine conference rolled around, I knew that I did want to be pursuing filmmaking and acting as a career, and so my parents and I tried to be very intentional about how do we proceed. In fact, there were a couple of agents or managers, people that we had gotten in touch with from in 2014. That said, hey, Danny needs to move out to California right now, and start being in projects, because he looks like he's 10, and he can act, and shows will want him, whatever it was. And my family and I we were financially, we weren't ready for that. We didn't expect that to be the response, and so we weren't just mentally prepared for that.
Well,
so
and at that age, you're not moving out alone,
Exactly. It would be the family, or at least with a parent, and then that just changes the family dynamic. It would be really, really hard. And so, familially and personally, when it comes and spiritually, I'm glad that I didn't move out to California at 14, because I think I really would have. I think it would have been so shiny, Yeah. California's shiny, and I would have chased the shiny things, and I really would have found myself in a ditch somewhere.
Yeah.
And also, you have you heard that you stay the same age mentally that you are at when you become famous. So if you become famous at 14, for the rest of your life, unless you intentionally work at it, and get counseling, you will remain mentally 14
Wow,
years old.
I've never heard that. No, I've never heard
Yeah.
that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Not that I think I would have become an immediate star at 14, but
But I get,
still
yes,
think
I
that
get what you're saying.
I would not have been mature enough to handle anything well. Not that I even was at 18, but I signed with an agent in Chicago that would send me out for commercial auditions. Sent me out for a lot of Coca-Cola ads and voiceover for McDonald's and stuff like that. And I think part of the reason that worked was that I thought that I could. I was like, yeah, I'm going to book this. I'm going to walk into the audition room and I'm going to book it. And so I booked a couple of small things, voiceover for McDonald's, and I did. I signed up. My parents, again, I can't sing their praises enough. Especially my dad was just so on board and such a cheerleader, and he was the dadager.
Yes.
He was always finding pages on Facebook that were like, follow this page so that you can work as an extra on Chicago PD or Chicago Med or whatever. And so I was cast as one of the characters who gets killed in an episode of Chicago PD, and got to meet some of that world, and it was just kind of that slow but sure continuing to submit yourself and doing the work for yourself, not expecting that your agent or your manager is going to do the work for you. I think so frequently any kind of talent gets signed with representation and then goes, all right, now I can sit back and wait for them to get me jobs. That's not going to happen. If you're not working, if you're not actively pursuing opportunities yourself, your agents are going to forget about you. I mean, there are good agents, and good agents stay on top of it. But even so, your job as an actor is not to sit back. Your job is to keep working and have somebody who's going to field offers for when the best opportunities show up. And so that's what it was. It was a lot of student films. It was a lot of constantly applying on Actors Access and on Backstage. And then in 2015 or 2016, I auditioned and got cast in I was cast as the lead in an independent feature film that was a horror film that shot in Ohio. And that was through those connections, I just started making contacts with more and more people. You become friends with the sound guy on that, and then Nick is like, oh, I'm working on this other project, and they're looking for somebody who looks kind of young and is short. I know this guy. Let's talk to Danny. And they send you an audition, and then you're flying out to Virginia to shoot a project that is out there for a couple of days, and then you become close friends with Marco, the cinematographer on that project, and Marco's like, oh, I'm doing this other project. And so it's as much the hardest thing, as you know, is getting your foot in the door, is getting that first project. It's such a catch-22 because you have to have credits on your resume to get cast in something, but to get cast in something to get credits on your resume, you have to have been cast in something. So that was that's the 40-minute way of saying you keep submitting yourself to things and not just waiting for other people to show up at your doorstep.
And so what was the final nail in the coffin then that made you want to move to California?
All of the time.
It was a slow burn. It wasn't. There wasn't a single thing where I went, okay, now's the time. Because also I don't think there is a now's the time. But I did a short film. It was another student film where I won a Best Actor award for that project, and that was definitely something that was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to see that I'm not just some hopeless idiot running around thinking that he can do this and can't. But started seeing that there was at least some confirmation that I wasn't terrible. And also, I grew up watching Family Ties. It's I don't know if you are familiar at all with that show, but Michael J. Fox he plays Alex Keaton, and it was a long-running show in the 70s. I'm gonna say, and now I'm second-guessing myself.
I think you're correct.
I'm so scared now. And I don't know,
80s.
because I watched it as a kid on Hulu. The 80s, dang it. But I saw Michael J. Fox.
I'm not that old.
Yeah, he's a liar. He doesn't know anything. I saw Michael J. Fox it's this guy who's kind of my same stature and sort of my same energy, and this like quirky short guy running around doing things, and he's in Back to the Future, and he's making all these movies, and I was like, if he can do it, maybe I can do it too, because he started from nothing, and I don't have any celebrity family that I know of, and so I was like, maybe I can do that too, and we started talking. It made sense to say, well, at 18, that's probably a good age to be on your own. That's if you're going to be on your own, 18 is a good age to do that. And so, just collectively, as I was growing up, we decided that 18. If I was going to go to California, 18 was the time to do it. And so I buckled down and started saving money, and we started planning for that to actually happen. And then in 2017, we said, all right, if he's going to be going out to California, we want to get connections out there, so let's do AMTC again, try and get agents, managers, people who want to work with me out in California. And so that's where you and I ran into each other again.
Yes, where we did the duet from the depths of...
Oh my! Sorry, I just got so many flashbacks.
And so let's combine the two now.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about this. What was it like originally moving to LA, being a Christian, and then kind of fast forward to what it is now? Because I can't believe that when you originally moved to LA and now are the same answer. There's just no way. You know what I'm saying? There's no way.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. So,
we talked about this a little bit. California is a place that you have to choose to love. You have to intentionally love on California before you're ever going to fall in love with it. When I first moved out here, I drove down from Illinois and stayed in the like back house of an Airbnb. It was like 3 square feet. I drove down. My mom came with me and like helped me settle in a little bit. And it was just like right off the bat, I was, as we were driving down, submitting to the stuff in Los Angeles on Actors Access and Backstage, and trying to find anything that I could, and taking anything that would come my way. Just like I need to get on set, and I need to get to know people. I need to start making connections with people, because otherwise you're just going to sit there and nothing's going to happen. And so I was like, background. I was one of 400 background actors in a music video. I was like, that was the first day that I arrived in Burbank. Immediately went to go do that. I was auditioning for like stupid internet commercial ads for like people's startup products, and the thing that struck me immediately when I showed up to California is that people are nice. People want community, and people want to know who you are. Obviously, you're walking through Hollywood, you're walking through downtown LA. You're going to run into people who need things from you, and who are going to approach you and ask you for money or try and steal stuff from you. But when you're in Burbank, when you're in Glendale, when you're in the neighborhoods of California, and you run into people, you start to realize how desperately people desire connection. Because this is a city that's so full of people on their phones, going to work, trying to get their work done, and go home and sleep. And so the owners of the Airbnb that we were staying at, whose names I desperately wish I could remember because they were so sweet, were a manager and a sound engineer, and we would just sit with them and talk with them. Like we'd come outside and they had like this little pool area, and we would just sit and chat with them and get to know them. They had their son was going out with some of his friends, and they took me to the local mall, and we walked around. And as a little homeschooler who had never, like, I don't think I'd ever been to a mall, but I was like, what's the point of walking around the mall if I'm not gonna buy anything from the mall? So why am I walking around? But I was invited into all these people's lives, and part of that is because I was interested in inviting them into my life too. Because when I showed up in California, the intention was, hey, I'm gonna be here, and I'm gonna tell people about Jesus. And that doesn't happen by just walking up to people randomly and saying, hey, Jesus loves you. I've seen people try that, and it doesn't work. Yes, there are times where God uses that, and it's definitely necessary still to have people who are willing to do that.
But when you're
Um,
going into a minefield, which is A, the entertainment industry, and B, California, and those are like one and the same, and you're trying
Yep.
to share the gospel with people. And like you were talking about, people are busy, people are doing stuff, but they want a connection. That connection isn't going to come from just Jesus, 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 Jesus. It has to be a community, a connect, like building a relationship with that person versus just shouting, shouting, shouting.
Yeah, one of the
my favorite things that we've been trying to implement in my church, Story City, is this idea of moving church from the stage to the table. That's how Jesus always did ministry, right? He said, come and see, come follow me, come get to know me, come eat with me, and let's talk. He ate with all of these. He ate with tax collectors and sinners and prostitutes, and the church leaders and the political authorities were like, oh my gosh, look at this guy. He's evil. He's spending time with people who we think are bad. What a better way to share the gospel than to go somewhere where people need the gospel. One of the illustrations that haunts me to this day, and in fact, it's a tattoo that I want to get. I want to get a matching tattoo with my best friend. Well, not matching, similar. He'd get something similar in the same style. But I once took a tour of the Merrimack Caves in Missouri, I think. I was young enough that I was being driven there, and I'm terrible with directions, so I don't remember.
So maybe it was that. I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe. But I know that it was in the Merrimack Caves. I don't know. Have you ever gone on a spelunking tour? Ever gone on a cave tour?
I have not. No.
One of the things that I've done it twice, and both places I've gone have done this. They'll take you into the tunnels underground, and they'll be showing you the stalactites and the stalagmites and everything. And you see all these tunnels, and then you'll usually go into this big sort of arena, this big room in the caves, wherever the largest spot is, and they'll have everybody take a seat. And the tour guide will stand up and he'll go, now, when these caves were first being discovered, you had spelunkers who had their gear, and most of them were just the only light they had was the light of a lighter. And he goes, now, can you turn off all the lights? And everything shuts black. And it is the darkest black that you have ever seen. Like, it is so dark. You can't see your hand in front of your face. You almost hear how dark it is, everybody's quiet, and you're hundreds of feet underground, so there is zero light coming through. And you sit there in the darkness for a second, and he goes, and then he takes a lighter, he pulls it out, and he clicks it, and the whole place lights up, because your eyes have adjusted to the darkness, right?
Yeah.
You can see every nook and cranny. You can see every corner. And he says, it doesn't take a bright light to shine in the darkness. And that sticks with me because that is so true about the gospel. It doesn't take a very bright light to shine in a place where there is no light. It doesn't take a bright light to light up everything if there's complete darkness. And Jesus is brighter than any light that we have. So why wouldn't I go to a place where it is scariest and darkest, and where the most people need to see a match in the darkness to tell them about Jesus? And that kind of leads me to the second half of the answer, which is people are desperately looking for answers. People know that they're in the darkness. This is a place where you have a lot of artists, and that's partly, why I found home. I moved to California, and I found some of the best and some of the closest friends that I have ever met, and the deepest relationships that I have ever been in. Because you have all these artists who are all trying to pursue some sort of truth, and you have so many people who are curious, who are looking for answers, looking for truth. You have so many people who are spiritual. You have so many people who are really almost there. And if you just look a little bit different, people start asking questions. Hey, Danny, why don't you use profanity? Hey, Danny, why do you wear an abstinence ring? Hey, Danny, why do you speak so highly about your friends and your wife? Like, there's no easier way to walk into conversations about Jesus when people are asking you to tell them about the reason that you're different. And the reason that I'm different is because of Jesus. And so that's by the grace of God that I get to be here for 7 years and say, I love Jesus Christ, and I'm going to follow him, and I'm going to tell anybody that I can about him, because people want to hear. I even in my first year out here, I was writing home and I was telling people, I was like, it's like stupid easy to share the gospel here. It's almost like too easy to share the gospel here. I don't feel like I'm doing missionary work because I'm becoming friends with people who don't know Jesus, and they're asking me to tell them about Jesus.
See, because I think people, when I talk about the like dun 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 of California, it's because I feel like people would almost equate going and moving to California as, and maybe this isn't the best, but this is just the first thing that popped in my head, almost like a former alcoholic going into a bar. And what I mean by that is, when you go to a place like California and you are you are a Christian and you are here, but you are just surrounded, and I don't know your specific political views, but I'm just going to go based off of mine. And I guess if you disagree, then I guess we'll find out real quick. But, going to a place like California where, this dude's a chick and this chick's a dude and, everybody's gay. And also it's like, you see, like when I went, you're seeing clear as day people high off their mind. This person's definitely drunk. This person's definitely a hooker. You're basically going into this lion's den where if you're a sole Christian, you're going into, temptation here, temptation here. If you struggle with it, you can find it there. That's kind of how I see it. And I feel like that's why I equate it to an alcoholic going into a bar. It's almost like somebody like that going into California, because if you struggle with it, you can find it. And so how do you maintain, especially in the entertainment industry, when a lot of the people, who completely go against your Christianity views, maybe your political views, when they completely go against that and you're having to work with these people, like let's say you're working with Danielle, but 5 seconds ago, their name was Danny. It's like, but you have to work with them for weeks on end, days on end. How do you find this balance of, yes, it is easy to share the gospel with people, especially when they're seeking out answers, but with somebody like the Danny, example I was just using, how do you go about sharing with them, or just even, keeping who you are, keeping your beliefs while also working in that area?
Yeah.
Certainly right. If there is something that you struggle with, you can find it. And I would argue that that's also true no matter where you are.
Yes.
Which I know is that you weren't saying that that's not the case. And that's a really good point. The first thing that I'll say is it's by the grace of God. By the grace of God, he has held me in his hand and he has kept me close. And he deserves all the glory for that. Secondarily, it's insane because I came out here and you've heard the joke that Jesus' greatest miracle was having 12 friends in his 30s?
I've never heard that.
It makes me chuckle. I can count immediately 7 guys who are newly married, kind of in the same stage of life as I am, who love Jesus and who are always talking about him. One of them lives 5 minutes from me. One of them lives 2 minutes from me. Another one is 5 minutes from me. I have been, by the grace of God, again, His providence alone, I came to California and I found a group of men who love Jesus more than anything else, and encourage me to love Jesus more than anything else. A wise man once said, "This wise man is my best friend's father." He said, "Think about the 3 people who are closest to you. You're going to look like the 3 people who are closest to you. Your life is you are going to be directly influenced and look just like the 3 people who are closest to you." And so, by the grace of God, the 3 people who are closest to me are men who look like Jesus. And when I moved out here, I intentionally one of the first things I did was like find a church. I have to find a church where I can land and have a community. It's actually not that church that I was going to is not the same church that I go to now. But it was. I'm so grateful that I had that community and that I had a place to land that was going to keep pulling me back to Jesus and keep having a community. To answer the question about like you're on set and you're running into people who have opposing political views and who are actively practicing and pursuing things that go against the instructions of the Bible and go against the teachings of what God tells us to do, is that it's not our job to fix sin. And it's not our job to win arguments. Those are the two things that I get really caught up with. It's really easy for me to show up and want to go, hey, you're doing this thing wrong, let me fix it, and also you think wrong about this, and here's why I'm right. We were actually talking about this in a youth group that I help lead. So many times in evangelism conversations and ministry conversations, our approach is like, I want to leave this conversation having won or having proven myself to be right. How selfish is that? Like, how screwed up and backwards is that if we're saying us as Christians, our job is to share the gospel, the good news, which is Jesus Christ crucified and resurrected, right, for our sin. The gospel is that I am a failure. I'm broken and I'm evil, and by myself I'm terrible and not worth looking at. But Jesus is the one that we should be looking at. He loved us when we were broken and far from him, and he sent his own son for no reason, according to us. Like, there's nothing that we did. He sent his own son to be brutalized and tortured and murdered so that we didn't have to have that punishment, so that Jesus Christ could deposit sin into hell and return to the right hand of God. That's what I need to be pointing at, not saying, hey, Danny's smart, Danny's right about this. And so frequently I have seen people's demeanors and attitudes and whole lives changed, not by me going, hey, Danielle, you're using the wrong name, let me tell you all the things that you did wrong, but by openly reading my Bible on set, and Danielle going, I hate that book. You're a Christian? Oh my gosh. I can't talk to you. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Why is that? Well, here's my life story. I'm going to tell you about that. I'm going to tell you all the ways that God is evil. Wow, I'm sorry that you've experienced that and you've been hurt those ways. And I don't want to be a part of you being hurt. I don't want to perpetuate you being hurt and marginalized and angered. And I'll tell you what Jesus has done in my life, and if you want, I'll talk about why I believe the things that the Bible says. But I know that Jesus loves me, and I also know that Jesus loves you. And I'm sorry that there's been so much pain.
Well, because people so many times equate God with the person that shared God with them, or the place that they went to, or versus actual. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear the sirens. Apparently, we're having like one crime a year in Helena. Anyway, they equate God with that one family member that shouted at them that one time. So when they say things, and I even saw it in Des Moines, Iowa, at the theater community here, people being so hateful towards Christianity and God. But as they went into it, I'm like, you're not talking about God. You're not talking about the Bible. You're not even talking about a church right now. You're talking about this one person who said this one thing that you didn't agree with. Because I think that's can be kind of the hump that people struggle to get over with too, is God is an extremely living God, as you laid out. But he is a just God, and he is a right God. And there are things that, as Christians, when we live out our day to day, that we are just not permitted to do. And I feel like that's where people have the hold up, because it's more fun to do whatever I want to do, because it brings me more joy and more happiness. And I think that is the hump. You know what I'm saying? I didn't mean
absolutely.
That Scott kind of just popped into.
No, you're totally
right. And that's why our job is to invite people to belong before they even believe. right? Because I'm not going to be the one who's going to who's going to convince somebody to change. I'm not going to be the one who's going to be the change in somebody's life, right? What's the only way that that's going to happen? Because yes, it is absolutely necessary that we follow the commands and the instructions and the guidance that God gives us. But that's only going to happen if they start a relationship with Jesus before they change anything in their life. You think about Zacchaeus, right? A tax collector who by all accounts and everything we know about him, didn't have any intentions of changing what he was doing. And Jesus said, "Hey, you, come eat some food with me. Let's just hang out." And through his relationship with Jesus, his life was changed. Not because of any of the other people in his life, not because of any of the other things that people told him to do, but because he got to see who Jesus was and know who Jesus was, know the call that Jesus has on his life, know that Jesus does love him, and then see that, oh, if I'm going to pursue Jesus, I have to put these other things aside.
Well, and kind of what you're saying too is, and correct me obviously if I'm wrong, but how you're kind of going about not actively explaining to them that they're wrong, but you know what I mean, people who don't believe in God, actively, you're not going to go ahead and actively describe to them, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. But I think my hang up sometimes is we also shouldn't, as Christians, go about then accepting it at the same time. And this is kind of the balance that we have to find as well and that's why you're talking about, you know what, sometimes I just bring my Bible to the side. I'm just reading it. Oh, I'm just sitting here. I'm just reading it. Because you're not going out of your way to go, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. But you're also not going out of your way to be like, yes, slay queen, you're slaying.
Yeah.
The world tells you should. You know what I'm saying? You're not actively going and being like, I'm going to go work on this project that goes against all of my morals just so I can, because there's also lines that we have to draw. And so just silently reading your Bible or, maybe somebody sees you praying and just having that moment where somebody's like, I'm sorry, were you praying just now? And having those moments, because that's a balance too, because as Christians, we either go all the way over here where we're argue. And I mean, there is a time and place for that, but it's not always on a set when you're like, I'm working here, and two, I'm trying to get people to ask me these questions, or we go on a complete other side where it's just so, and I don't want to use the word loving because I feel like that's not the word. It's so accepting,
Permissive.
the way, yeah, where it's, okay, I'm going to set my beliefs aside. I'm going to set my morals aside so that this person can feel comfortable, because there's that difference. Because one of the things I had here is, how do you decide as a Christian where you draw the line on which content you decide to do and what not? And I think that kind of bleeds into this conversation as well, because I can't even imagine, because when I did theater in rinky-dink Des Moines, Iowa, I struggled with this all of the time, and then that's what honestly spiraled me into just absolutely not believing in anything. I barely did anything with God because I had I was not on a good moral foundation. I was the Sunday school kid who knew absolutely everything, but why? And why does that matter? Why do I believe it? I just knew what, fact. And so the minute these people started coming at me, I absolutely folded, people that were friends of mine who were gay. It's like, okay, I'm just going to go with it. Now, and there's not argue with you, but I'm just going to absolutely finish. Of course, that's okay. Slay. Everybody's queens. That's what I did, basically. And so how do you, A, draw the line between content because you don't want to go against your morals, but B, along the same conversation, finding that line as well between, I'm not going to argue with you, but I'm also Danielle, to use that example. But Danielle, if you come to me and go, you have to call me a girl and do all this stuff, I'm not going to do that. That goes against my morals. How do you find that? That was a long-winded way of asking this extremely simple question.
No, that's great. Well, and I think there's two
things that go into that, even before I start to answer that question that you brought up earlier, that a lot of the time people are responding to not that they hate God, but they hate the experience they had with somebody who loved God. It's really important. It is wrong for us to deny that there's pain, and it is wrong for us to deny that those experiences that they had were wrong, right? If they were, if somebody says, this person who said they love Jesus abused me, trying to sweep that under the rug is wrong. That is wrong of us to do, because our call as Christians is to look like Christ, right? And so if we say, oh, because they were Christian, we're going to try and find a way to excuse it, that's using the Lord's name in vain. That is taking God's name and the call that he's given on our life and saying we're justifying what we did because we're saying it was for God. The other thing is, you also mentioned, so people see God through the people that introduce them to God, right? And we can that can be used to our advantage or our disadvantage, right? As Christians, someone once said, if you go to a concert and it's a Mozart concert and somebody starts playing piano and they're terrible, they're awful, they just do a horrible job, and you're like, this sucks, I don't like it. Who are you going to blame? Are you going to blame Mozart, or are you going to blame the person sitting there representing Mozart's work? You're not gonna say, oh, Mozart is awful, Mozart is terrible because of this concert that I went to. You're gonna go, this guy who was playing Mozart, who was trying to represent Mozart, did a terrible job and doesn't sound anything like Mozart. And so we as Christians, our job is to represent Mozart, represent God well, right? And so if we get to be accurately representing Jesus, and we get to be the first impression that they have of who God is, that's us using that reality to our advantage, right? That they get to see who Jesus accurately is, a loving, not what's the word I'm looking for? Where you allow people to do things, and not an enabling God, not an enabling God, but an empowering God. When people get to see us accurately representing that, we get to be the people that are the good first impression of who God really is. So how do you draw the line between roles that you take and roles that you don't take? Projects that you're a part of and projects that you're not? That's such a good question. And every time there's a project that is iffy, it's a new conversation. I remember one of the things that was recommended to me when I was just starting acting, and I think you'll probably remember this too, because it may have been AMTC, was to put together a list of things that you will absolutely never do. I will never kiss someone on camera. I will never do a nude scene. I will never, whatever it is. I had a list like that, and I don't stand by that. I think that every project needs to be, depending on your approach, every project needs to be its own conversation. My approach to filmmaking, just like California, is like, the projects that are the worst, the projects that have the things that I don't want to be a part of or want to do, are the projects that have the people who need to hear about Jesus. And so I often find myself gravitating towards and being pulled towards projects that I'm like, hey, Mom, don't watch this project. Don't watch this film. Because the long and the short of it is, for me, my reason for acting isn't so that I can become a celebrity. My reason for acting isn't even so that I can support myself. My reason for acting is so that I can tell people who don't know who Jesus is, who Jesus really is.
So how do you morally draw that line then? Like, when you're talking about projects, like, for example, I wanted to do Heathers, the musical, so bad. I wanted to play her so bad. Loved the music she sang, loved the songs. And my one holdup, though, was there's that one scene where they're basically having sex on stage. I mean, it's extremely insinuated that that's what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, everything else in it, I love. The music, love. The story, love. Love the 90s movie, love, 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 love. And that one scene, I was like, honestly, I just don't. And I remember auditioning for it. I got a call back for it. And I just remember being like, I honestly don't think I could do it, because of that just went against. And even back then, when I was so far gone, I was like, that still just goes against who I am. It's premarital sex. It's basically encouraging people to do whatever you want to when you're drunk and you just are looking for a good time. And so I was like, that's just something I just don't think I can do. And so how do you draw that, especially when you're accepting projects purposefully for the reason to share with people who don't believe what you believe?
Yeah, great question. I think we're interestingly enough, sort of talking about two different approaches to ministry, or two different approaches to acting. Who are the audiences? Who is the person who is hearing about Jesus? Is the person is the message that I'm worried about my message on set to the people I'm acting with, or is the message I'm worried about the message that the film itself is telling? Obviously, you need to keep both in mind. You can't just have one or the other, but you have to decide which one takes priority. And for me, I don't want to be a part of films like God's Not Dead, for example, or remember Brave, or not Brave, Courageous, or like Fireproof.
Yes,
I think, yeah, Facing the Giants. Those films are excellent and have an audience, and I am glad that they exist. But I am uninterested in making movies that speak to a Christian audience. I am uninterested in making films that say I'm a Christian film and I'm going to talk about God to the audience. I am more interested in making films where I'm infiltrating the enemy lines. Where I am on set. Yeah, exactly. I am the only Christian there, where I get to, or hopefully one of a couple Christians, because it's a lot easier when you have.
Yeah, it's like reading your Bible.
Yeah,
you're kind of looking around.
exactly. Yeah, but where the people that are hearing the gospel are the people making the movie, not the people watching the movie. And so I've still danced around this question that you've asked. Is like those lines like you're having sex on stage, or you're kissing someone, or doing whatever it is. The reason I say that it matters project to project is you do have to take in that question of like what is the moral of the story of the movie.
Right. I was going to say that the why is important. Sometimes it's like I've kissed people in a show, but it was to move the story along. It wasn't anything that went against my moral. So I was like, okay, that the why makes sense, because this kiss has to happen so that this and this and this and this and this to move the plot forward. It's not just kiss just to kiss, or just using your kissing example.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but let's say
this kiss has to happen so that this happens, so that this happens, so that this happens, so that the audience walks away going, oh, okay, insurance fraud is fine. I don't want to be a part. I would probably say no to that kiss.
Yeah.
But let's say there's a film where it's like, okay, this kiss has to happen so that later on down the line, people ask the question at the end of the movie, oh, is it really right to get divorced? Let's say. I would probably do that kiss. It's sort of like Denzel Washington. He goes, I will absolutely play villains. I will play villains, but only if the villain gets his comeuppance in the end. Only if the villain is defeated. His villainy is not approved of, is not praised. In a very similar way, that's why every incident is a conversation. There's a film that I'm one of the leads in that we're going to be shooting early next year, where my character gets essentially sexually assaulted, and it's uncomfortable and kind of, it's not necessarily graphic, but not G-rated. And that was a conversation I had to have with my wife. That's very important. Is like, hey, I got to that page in the script and I immediately texted my wife. I was like, I need you to read the script so that we can talk about whether or not this is even something I need to consider. And then you have a conversation with your wife about what's the moral of the story, what's the end result, what's the purpose of these things happening. And the moral of this story isn't even like, hey, it's not even like I'm presenting you with a good moral. You get to the end of this movie and it's sort of like, oh, I need to think about some things.
Yeah.
But those things do happen on screen. And so that's why I think every film needs to be a conversation. Every project needs to be a conversation. There are also people that I respect so much, like Neil McDonough. And I think this is just as laudable, if not more laudable, to say, Neil McDonough says, I will never kiss a woman on screen, ever. And he's like, I've lost projects because of that. But if my kids see me steal on screen, or if they see me, have a fight scene on screen, that's all fake. But if they see me kiss another woman on screen, they're seeing their father actually kiss another woman, and I'm not going to do that. And I applaud him, and I think that he should continue doing that. And I think other people should do the same. And I may get to a point in my life where I go, oh my gosh, I wish that was my approach, and I wish I had done that forever, and I'm never going to kiss somebody. But as my convictions stand right now, and as my, every time you get a script that's like, oh, I don't know about this, you spend weeks in prayer talking about it and asking God what He's going to tell you. As it stands right now, my approach has been, I'm going to be a part of projects that maybe not other Christians would be a part of, so that I get the opportunity to tell somebody that I've been on set with for 6 weeks and built a relationship with and knows that they can trust me. I'm given permission, to say, hey, let me talk into your life a little bit and tell you about how much Jesus changed my life.
Well, and one of the main reasons why I started this podcast was because there are so many things that, sorry, my nose is running. There are so many things as Christians that we just decide to not discuss because it's like too real. Just like sexual assault, I did an episode talking about my own experience with that, and just honestly having a full testimony moment where there wasn't really the positive was that I believe in God and I believe in a loving Father, and I can live out my life knowing that. But there is no positive, outcome from that. It happened and it happened, And so when you're talking about, deciding which roles you're going to take, and sometimes taking controversial roles, it's like, but is it that controversial when people deal with it? Christians still deal with things. That's one of the main reasons why I started this. That's why I've done episodes about eating disorders, sexual assault, like you were talking about, real life issues that Christians they try to not talk about a lot because it's just too intense. But, we're still people on this earth. Just because we're Christians doesn't mean we're, all of a sudden above all of these people in the sense of real world evil that comes at us. So when you're talking about doing roles where it portrays sexual assault, or, I'm talking about doing this podcast and just like breaking down my own life story, people were like, wow, that was a lot. I can't believe you talked about that. I don't think I went through that just to then hold it in my heart and in my mind for the rest of my life and never bring it up, because there's going to be somebody else out there who goes, wow, that's happened to me and I need to, I'm really understanding and reflecting on this, or wow, this just happened to me. Clearly there's a way out of this. And so when you're talking about that, and even talking about being on a set and talking with somebody about that, especially because I feel like a lot of times when you accept to do a project, and not all the time, but sometimes it's because you have some form of connection with that story, especially when it's something deep and real like that. You've got to at least know somebody who's been through that. You've been through it yourself, especially if you're like a crew member and you're working on something like that. It's like or even
if you're going to do a good job of it, you have to connect with it.
And so if you're on a set like that and you can have that moment with, light person number 4 as they pass by you and you're reading your Bible and just talking about that and breaking down and having that relationship, I just remind me of one of the main reasons why I started this, because yes, it is from a Christian perspective, but it's from the perspective that we can be Christians and still have these conversations, because this is what people deal with. Because too many times we make Christian movies that are so just like cheesy cheese balls, and it's not real life. This just doesn't really happen. Like, just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean that I didn't get, sexually assaulted, or I didn't date horrible people, or I didn't get involved with alcohol. Just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean that all of that stuff I completely, like, with my shield of whatever, battled against it. Like, I'm still a real life human being, evil still comes at me. And so when you're talking about that and relating to different people, that's kind of like what sparked my little brain on that.
Christians are supposed to look different than the world. We're supposed to be in the world and not of it, right? But I also think that one of the fatal flaws of like Christians is being weirdos. Is that we're just, a lot of the time we're uncomfortable to be around. And it's like, why would I just don't want to spend any time with that person because they're weird. And you're never going to get the permission, you're never going to earn the right to speak into somebody's life if you're only approaching them with the weird Jesus face.
Yeah.
You know, you have to crack your own facade and let people in to understand who you are and see your vulnerabilities, see your own failures. Not your failures directed at them, but let them into the failures that you've experienced. So that
And you've got to have a
earn
good
permission to
faith
share the gospel.
Foundation.
Yeah.
You've got to have a good faith foundation, because I ran into that I was standing on absolute nothing. You know, I did not build my house on a rock, okay? The rock was non-existent. It was like it was the great value rock, okay? Like we were talking about earlier, you know? And so when you're going, especially when you're talking about, I'm going into this field because I want to be the light of Jesus, when you're going in there with that set mission, I mean, that's amazing, because not a lot of people do that. Or people, you know, for example, like we've had a lot of problems sometimes with our public schools going and just absolutely not even caring about education and just going straight into, you know, involving them with all the craziness of the world, that it's like, do we pay you for that? And I knew a lot of parents who were sending their kids to these public schools, young kids, specifically so that they could be lights. And that's kind of what you're talking about, but it's different. Because
Yeah, the child has to do that.
a 10-year-old to go into a sea of public schoolers and begin to, you know, you're putting a weight on their shoulders that they have not accepted themselves.
Yeah,
Now, it's different
the
when
child
you are
has
moving
to
there.
choose to do that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you are moving there. Your parents aren't going, you know what, we are going to have you move to California because you need to be this light. We're going to put you into this. You, as a Christian, are going, I want to be this light. And you're learning about the gospel. You're studying up so you can be ready with those answers. You're bringing your Bible to set like you were talking about. But I was just thinking about how you were talking about and praising your parents for this decision to not move you to California when you were a kid. But we have so many parents who are putting their kids on purpose into situations like that. It just kind of sparked me while you were talking about that. So
Yeah, it's the pursuit of worldly gain, not the pursuit of spiritual self-sacrifice.
So fun question now. I like that all day. So so I actually knew absolutely nothing that you had done project wise, because it's not, okay, this sounds horrible, but I would never forget about you. But, you know, we just
All right. I'll.
completely fit,
Ouch.
you know? like last year you texted me on Instagram, Happy Mother's Day. I was like, wow, this is a blast from the absolute past. I was like, okay, thanks. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just,
Happy Mother's Day, by the way.
thank you. I appreciate it. And so I was like, you know, I should probably look him up before we do this, because what if he's like won 8 Oscars and I'm just like, so are you Ricky Dink, you know? And so I was looking at your IMDb page, which is funny because I also have an IMDb page, and it is from the movie Unplanned, which is the Abby Johnson story about planned.
Yes, I remember.
For that movie, and they both got cut.
That is how it goes. But hey, I'll bet you had some conversations on set.
It was, well, my name was like in the credits. And so people were like, we didn't see you. And I was like, yeah, I was like in the back, kind of. Just fine. Anyways, that's great. That's how I really share my testimony. It's just, I just lie. Okay, but anyways, I was looking at your IMDb points, right? And all of a sudden I'm like, is this real life? You were still a Michael J. Fox story. So you played Michael J. Fox. You were talking about him earlier. And I was like, everybody knows who that is. I mean, back to the season 4. So, I mean, how do you even, like, obviously you audition. I'm not an idiot. But how do you, like,
No, you're not.
did you, like, let him at all or talk to him at all? Was that, like, freaking nuts for you? Like, now it's, like, the fun part. Now it's not as fun, but this is also fun.
Yeah, it's kind of a wild, like, full circle moment for me. I was on the road from California to Wyoming to visit a friend of mine's parents. I was spending Thanksgiving with them. And that's something you don't think about when you move across the country away from your parents. Is that you don't get to spend all of your holidays with them anymore. It sucks. But I got to spend Thanksgiving with his parents, and they're just lovely, amazing. And this was also around the same time that I was just starting to get into the talking stage with my wife, the woman who is now my wife. And
Yes.
My overseas wife. That's what he means.
Yeah, my overseas wife. Yeah, my girlfriend in Canada.
My mail-to-order wife. We were just
Yeah. Yeah. No, we all thought that was the only way it was going to happen.
And I got an email from my agent. I got an email on Actors Access, a breakdown that was like, "Hey, they're making a documentary about Michael J. Fox, and they're looking for people who are under 5'4" to audition." And it's going to be kind of like at that point they were like, it's going to be kind of like Drunk History. We're going to see your face and you're going to say the lines, but Michael J. Fox is going to voice over it, so you're playing the younger version of him. Have you ever seen Drunk History?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Cracks me up.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yep. And I was on my way to Wyoming to spend Thanksgiving with my friend's family. And I was like, oh man, how am I? Yeah. I was like, I gotta go all the way around.
Turn this
Oh, man,
sucker
I
around.
gotta get this done. So there was, fortunately it was due after we got back, but it was like just after we got back. So the road trip back from Wyoming, it goes through Vegas, and we were stuck. We were literally in the car for almost 24 hours straight.
Wow.
It took there was no reason for there to be so much traffic. There was no reason for any of it to be as challenging as it was, but it just took us forever to get back. And the next day, I had to shoot 2 scenes and a couple of signature moves, and they wanted to see you move around, see if you understood his physicality and could.
Were you
do it
so
similarly.
nervous? I would have been.
And so these were just self tapes, fortunately. So I was nervous, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I know Michael J. Fox. I am Michael J. Fox. I've wanted to be him forever. If anybody's gonna get it, it's me. And I shot the self tapes, and I sent it in, and didn't hear anything for 2 months. And I was like, well, didn't get that.
I guess I'm not Michael J. Fox.
Yep, sucks. And then I got an email that was just like, hey, don't cut your hair. Okay, I won't cut my hair. And a couple days later, they're like, hey, we want some follow-ups. Can you shoot another scene? Can you give us just some photos of your profile and all that? And we want to see another signature move, which were they had just pulled clips from a couple different things he had been in. Kick up a skateboard, flip onto a couch, and do this muscle pose that he does in this movie. So I was like, okay, yeah, I can do that. So I did that, and I sent it back in. And another month goes by. And I'm like, I didn't hear anything. I didn't get it.
Were you just growing out your hair this whole
Yeah,
time?
I was just growing it out. I mean, this is the longest you've seen my hair. Longest my hair has been in a long time. And I was working at a coffee shop at the time. It was middle of the shift. I got a call. I was talking. I was at point of sale with the customer, and I got a phone call, and it was my agent. I was like, oh my god, okay. I finish up. I wrap up, and I run to the back, and I'm like, hey, sorry, I missed your call. What's going on? They're like, they want you to come in and do an in-person audition. Michael J. Fox is going to run this audition. Davis Guggenheim is going to be there. Michael J. Fox is running the audition, and you're going to do these lines and run these things in front of him.
Okay. Oh my
They were like, you're free this date. And I was like, yes, I am.
You're like, the coffee will wait.
Yeah.
The coffee will wait.
Yeah. So I
so
showed up,
nerve-wracking.
and there are 3 guys. There are 3 guys my age, and then there are 3 or 4 guys who are playing the even younger version of Michael. They've got Michael is like sat in the audition room itself, and then they have like a holding room for us, and they had all of us like every time they would do something, they would have us come out together, and we would perform it like we would watch them perform in front of Michael, which was the scariest thing ever to like not only have the man himself watching you, but also the other guys who are trying to be the man himself watching you.
Auditioning with other people in the room is, especially when you watch somebody before you and you're like,
Yeah.
damn it, that was so good.
Yeah. It's then you're like, I'm gonna say it the same way.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It was so much fun because Michael is hysterical. He's so clever. Like he's just on the spot. He's so good. We had to. They had a stunt trainer there, and they taught us how to like do a slide over the hood of a car. One of the things that we were supposed to do is like. The end of the story is I find myself standing with my pants down and my boxers in front of Michael J. Fox going, okay, So that's where the story ends, just so you know.
Okay. Guys, it gets so good.
It gets so good, yeah. There in my pink heart boxers in front of Michael. We do a scene from Family Ties, which I literally just watched that episode, and then they gave us a script, and I was like, ha, no way. So we did that scene. I did my best Michael impression with my voice. They had us like slide over the hood of a car. They had us do a couple of different things, and the last thing that we needed to do, while Michael was still there, was we had to do a scene from a movie where he's talking to a girl. She's on the bed, and she's like, "What should we do?" And he jumps, flips onto his back on the bed, and yanks his pants off. And he's like, "I don't know, what should we do?" And so they're like, "All right, go for it." And so in front of Michael J. Fox and a room full of casting directors and producers and the two other guys who are auditioning to play his character, I have to flip and yank my pants off and land on a bed, and then I stand up, and Michael's just like looking me in the eye, giving me notes, like, "Oh, that was good. Try this instead. Make sure you do this. Go ahead and pull your pants up, and we'll try it again." And I was like,
Pull your pants up. Yeah, why don't you pull your pants up, son?
yeah. It was really surreal, really cool. The very last thing that we did after Michael left was we did one shot where they wanted you to run down an alley and see what your physicality looked like. We got to the end of that, and it's crazy. Davis Guggenheim like pulled me aside and he was like, "Really good, kid. Really good." And then walked away, and I was like,
You're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm profusely sweating."
yeah, really. I was like, I can't. I gotta go change. Good thing I brought wardrobe options. And I called my parents. I called my wife. I called just about everybody, and I was like, "Hey, I just auditioned in front of Michael J. Fox."
I mean,
I
that's
don't know, maybe we don't tell people that I did that. I was like, I just auditioned. Michael J. Fox was there. If I don't get this part, I still consider this a win. Like this is pinnacle for me. Like I got to experience that. And I also had a sense that maybe it was coming. And a week or so later, got a call that I booked it, and I made a scene in the coffee shop because I was there again, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And
Yeah, then you have to go back to giving people coffee. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, it was wild. Yeah, oh my gosh, I was lattes, and I was like, "Latte for you, warm the house. You get a shot. You want a snow?" Yeah,
You're like, I can afford this now.
yeah. For a while, I didn't even know how much. Like, I didn't know if I was getting paid. I didn't know what was going on. Yeah, who knows? So
I flew up to Canada, and we shot it for we were there for four weeks. I got to make some good connections. I'm actually working on pitching a show with one of the guys from that show now. So like that's the thing, it's all connections, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of actors forget how important it is to like stay in contact and be a good texter, and how to that the people you work with are pros, and so if you're worth working with, they're going to try and work with you. and it was an insane experience. I had just
So would you
started
say
dating
that's
with my wife
the
at
biggest
that point, too.
project that you've ever worked on so far?
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
that's
so that's got to be unlike anything that you've done. I mean, was
Yeah.
he there with you then, like on the set when you were doing stuff, or was
He wanted to be. There was so much going on with COVID that he wasn't. He just couldn't. He wasn't allowed to be. He tried actually. I got to meet his parents. He FaceTimed in regularly and was like, "Hey, how are things going? How what's up with production? And thanks. I've been watching dailies. Thanks for all the work you guys have been putting in." But it was. There are things that I'm so frustrated with because there were shots that we got that were so cool, that were just absolutely awesome that never made it into the film. Davis is really good at he knows what he needs to get, and he knows how to make a beautiful image, and so he'll shoot it until we get it, and then when he's in the editing bay, he's also ruthless. Like he's willing to. You've heard the term "kill your babies," right?
yes?
He'll kill his darlings. He'll kill his babies. He's like, I know that this serves the story better if we don't use it, so get rid of it. There was this awesome shot that took us. We shot into the night. We shot where it's talking about how Michael would go from the Family Ties set during the day and then get driven to the Back to the Future set while learning his lines, and then walk out of the car, change as he's walking onto set, and then start shooting there.
Wow.
And so we kept calling it the Kessel Run shot, where I was in the car in the back, the camera was behind me, it would move out with me, and we would walk down this probably 50-foot, maybe 100-foot walkway created by just trailers and makeup vans and stuff, and I take off my shirt and I put on the Michael J. Fox stuff, and people are handing me things, and I'm putting on a wardrobe, and they're combing my hair, and they're putting on makeup, and I'm buttoning things up, and I'm being handed this, that, and the other thing, and you get to the end, and then the actor playing Robert Zemeckis shows up and points down there, and it was this. It took us so many shots to get right. We did it over and over and over and over and over again. And I was at Sundance watching it, and it was playing, and they just kept cutting to different things, and I was like, no!
You're like, where did this go?
So much work into this. It looks so cool. I mean, it needed to be cut up the way that it was. It told the story better, but it was like, oh man, I wish people could have seen how cool that shot was on its own.
That's amazing. That's when
I saw that, I was like, no freaking way. That is so. I was curious if you'd actually met him. I mean, that's incredible. And so,
Yeah.
I want to
Peak in my career. I can retire now.
I mean,
Go back to slinging lines.
amazing. Yeah. So I want to circle back to faith as we kind of close up a little bit.
Yeah.
So, what do you think has challenged your faith the most? Because, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it would be hard to say that it has all been sunshine and rainbows. Like, you've never been tempted to do anything or been around people that feel like, wow, this is a really big struggle to be having a relationship with Christ. So, what do you think has been your biggest, maybe your biggest test of faith or just your biggest struggle in general?
Yeah. So I was a bit of a hoe.
Okay.
And
That's fair. You know what? That's fair. People in the audience won't appreciate it, but I appreciate the term. Yes.
I mean, I didn't have rebellious years, because I was homeschooled. I lived at home. Everything that I did was at home and at church. So when I moved out to California, I was 18. That was the first time I was ever on my own. And so my 18 to 21 years were my rebellious years, which is wild.
me.
Yeah,
That's me.
I had total autonomy. I didn't have anybody keeping an eye on me. I didn't have anybody knocking on my door and being like, "Hey, what are you doing in there?"
Yes.
So there was, this is information that has never entered the internet sphere before. But my best friend and former roommate will tell you that there was at least a year where there were several girls on Snapchat that I was probably talking to, and somebody on text, and somebody through TikTok that I was having conversations with, and I was looking for validation through women. I wanted to be in a relationship. I wanted to be the hot guy. I wanted to whatever it was, and that was probably those are the years that I'm least proud of. I wasn't waking up in the morning and doing my devotions. I wasn't spending time in prayer daily. I wasn't surrounding myself with in time with the guys who looked like Jesus. And so I was looking for fulfillment in places that weren't Jesus. And that is sad to have to admit, but it's the truth.
And
Well,
I'm
it's something
also
quote that's been a really big theme that goes along with what you're saying, where it says, when you enjoy God more, you enjoy sin less. And it works the reverse, is when you enjoy sin more, you enjoy God less.
Yeah.
And so it kind of popped in my brain as you're talking, because literally the exact same ages you're discussing are the exact same ages that I went through my own, I guess, hoe phase. I guess we're just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Is because it's just because it seems so easy. Because I'm like, you guys aren't going to come over and, you guys aren't going to ask me anything. You guys aren't going to even I'm on my own. I can do whatever I want. Cool.
Yeah.
And
And the thing is that needs to happen is like they shouldn't have been coming over and checking up
on you.
Yes.
Eventually, there's the leave and cleave aspect. That's for marriage specifically. But I have friends who are in relationships and are married or whatever it is who have never experienced living on their own, and they go straight from living with parents to living with a spouse. And if that's what's happening, then you're going to treat your spouse like your parents. They're the only other people you've ever lived with. In the same way, by the grace of God, right? Like that, if I had anything tattooed across my chest, that's what it would be. By the grace of God, the things that the enemy intended for evil and that were evil and that he used for evil, God has turned for good. There are so many things in my life that I regret, but I am proud that I get to regret them.
Yes.
And that I'm not in a place where I still am just keeping them a secret, God is better. Jesus loves you. Jesus loves me. And he proved it by dying and by making atonement for my sin. And I get to see that so much more clearly, and I get to see the depths of my own depravity because my depravity is pretty deep. But God is better. Those are, my, one of the pastor, the boys camp preacher at the camp that my family served at, his favorite phrase was, but God. And let me tell you, boys, that's one big but. But it's true, Like, I would be in a ditch somewhere but God. But by the grace of God, he has shown me how worthy he has made me.
Yes.
And so I get to live in that, and that's what gets to keep me from ever wanting to go back.
Yes, and it's almost like because I also have had people where they want to go right from living with their parents right into living with somebody else, and and I always tell them, you have to live by yourself, and I'm like, you have to. It is so vital, even if it's like a friend. Hi, it's my husband. Even if it's
my husband.
he said I. Even if it's a friend, even if it's a roommate, but they're like in another room, you guys aren't responsible with each other. You have to have this moment where you're just like, I need to figure out, what do I believe? Why do I believe it? Can I sustain myself? You need to learn how to pay. It's things as simple as paying my bills on time, needing to have a job, being responsible. I don't have something.
Do the dishes, take out the trash, notice that your sock drawer is empty. Like any of those.
Yes. And it's almost like you said, I'm blessed that I can regret those things and that I'm not there. But if I never lived on my own, I feel like there would have always been a part of me when I first got married that would have been like, what would it have been like if I had done that? What would it have been like if I, was with somebody else? And that's horrible to say, and some people are hardwired where they don't have to do those things and they're just content being married to somebody. That's great for them. I wish that had been me sometimes. But
Watch out, Steve. Sounds like she's not content.
but I'm so stubborn and so needing to be forced into not realizing that I am right. Like, I don't need to always be right, but I want to be. And so the fact that God, knew that I was going down this hard path, I went through a lot of hard times, met a lot of horrible people that did a lot of horrible things. And at the time I was like, I feel abandoned. I feel like you don't even love me anymore because I don't even go to church. So I was basically in kind of like a screw you mode. But now that I'm here and I have my daughter and my husband and we're blessed to, live where we live and do all of this stuff, it's like, if I had never been through any of that, I would have never ended up to this point. There would have just been absolutely, and if I had ended up at this point, I would not have appreciated it and felt so blessed like I do right now. Because it would have just been something I would have inevitably done.
Yeah.
You need C.S. Lewis talks about the idea that you can't tell if something's crooked unless you have a straight line to compare it to, right? I think that, and that's in his book Mere Christianity, and he talks about God has to exist because otherwise evil cannot exist. That bleeds into storytelling. That concept of contrast is in every aspect of filmmaking, right? If you don't have something that's dark in the scene, you can't tell how bright something is. If you don't have a break in the action, you can't feel the impact of the high intensity fight scene. In the same way in our lives, if we don't have any low points, then there's no way for us to be able to declare the glory of God and his goodness in the high points. Now, that doesn't mean that you should go out and seek low points, right? That's not saying that
Yes, please don't hear me.
that there are people who don't have low points. What it's saying is understanding that no matter what, no matter how deep or how shallow your low point may be, understanding the true ramifications and the impact of that low point. Any low point can be deep and awful if you understand the goodness of God. And so it's putting everything into perspective.
And so my last question for you is, what is your advice to maybe parents who are listening, who have kiddos who are interested in this stuff, just like you were, or maybe you are the grown kiddo who you are interested in this stuff? What is your advice to them where they go, well, I really want to be a part of this industry. I really want to move to a place like California or California itself, but they're worrisome because of their faith, or they're worried about the cuckoos of California, or they're worried about uprooting their lives. So what is your advice to them?
I'm not a parent, so I need to be cautious
in any advice I give to parents. I know that there are so many things that I get to learn when I become a parent. But I can certainly say that I am so grateful that my parents were as supportive and as hands-off as they were. My dad did a really good job of encouraging me and believing that I could do something, being honest when there were places that I was weak, like with the stand-up comedy that I did, the showcase event that I did for AMTC. He told me that he was like, "Are you sure you want to do this? This isn't something you're familiar with, and you may not be very good." And I decided to do it anyway. And that's a really good example of him being like, "Hey, I support you, and I want you to do a good job. I believe in you as an actor, and so I'm helping with AMTC. I'm also not going to just let you sit around and call yourself the most talented person in the world, and give you a warning that this may suck." He put in so much work to help me with the executive side of acting. My mom was unbelievably supportive, even when it scared her. She would drive me to auditions all the time. She in fact she insisted on driving me to auditions because she was like, I know someday I won't be able to anymore, so I'm going to drive you to auditions while I still can. She would run lines with me. She would do self-tapes with me. And she likewise would tell me, hey, I don't think I don't think that was the best job you could have done, or I don't think you're doing the work that you should be to be submitting yourself to things, or your agent asked you to do this, you need to do this tonight. But they were also both really good at recognizing when it was time to go, all right, Danny's an adult, or Danny's got this. We'll let him go backstage and get into costume. We'll let him move to California and pursue Jesus. Pursue filmmaking. Ministry through filmmaking. The thing that's really important is making sure you understand what your child's motivation is. And I'm not a parent, so I don't know what the line is between stopping your child from moving to California and pursuing acting if their dream is, hey, I just want to be famous. But I can say to my peers and my underclassmen, if your goal is just to be famous, you're not going to get there. You look at actors like Josh Brolin talks about how when he was growing up and when he started acting, they weren't trying to achieve celebrity. The idea of celebrity didn't really exist the same way it does today. They weren't trying to get TikTok famous or Instagram famous. He and his friends would get together and they would take a scene and they would break it down, and then they would look at it a different way and break it down a different way, and then they would try and find a different way to say it, and then they tried the Stanislavski method, and then they tried the ad method, and they'd try all these other things because they loved the craft, they loved the storytelling, they loved the ability to create and communicate emotion. Acting should be therapy. Acting should be the opportunity to talk about experiences that you've had through the words that are on the script, not to just show up and create an end product. Acting is about the experience that you have doing it and communicating what you've experienced and how it truthfully comes out of you. And so, if you're pursuing acting or filmmaking to be an Avenger, to be on the front page of Instagram every day, if that's what you're doing it for, you're going to be dissatisfied. And listen to your parents if they tell you not to do it. But lastly, I think the most important thing is be aware of your people. Whether it's your faith, whether it's just in the industry, or just your friends. Choose good people. Know who the good people are in your life and be a good person to others. If you're not worth working with, people aren't going to work with you. If you are worth working with, people that you don't want to work with are going to want to work with you. So you have to be really intentional about the people you surround yourself with. And I think the wisest advice is to say, I know that I'm going to look like the 3 people who are closest to me, so let me find 3 people that I want to look like to be close to me.
That was good. Is there anything else that I missed that you want to say before I close this out?
That's a great question. No, I think you nailed it.
Well, good. Then that means I did my job, so I'm totally fine with that.
You're a pro. You're an absolute pro. You know what you're doing.
And this was Let's Talk episode 20, my first edition of having an enemy infiltrate my lines, a man talk Monday. So let's talk about the entertainment industry. Make sure you follow me on all of the things. You already know what they are. And stay tuned for more. Thanks.